everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Silver Lyming. I'm here, your host, Andy Jardin, and I bring you this podcast in an effort to raise awareness more about Lyme and tick-borne illness, and also then to share with you stories of others who have healed and recovered, having gone through one of the hardest fights that I can think of from a health perspective for people. I think one thing that makes Lyme so interesting is that it can take years to recover from. And I don't know if people quite understand that, yeah, certain other diseases could take years to recover from, but like, I don't know, something maybe more acute, you're in and out, or you're sick for like a 6-month window and you have a definite plan of how to fix that problem, and then it's over and it's done. Or you can have a surgery and you can heal and go about your way. It might be a little slowed down for a couple months, but something like Lyme disease, if you don't catch it right away, it'll slowly start to deteriorate and nag at you, and you'll have these different symptoms popping out all over the place, and nothing really seems to make sense. Doctors are a little bit confused. They think maybe it's stress, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And then, you just decline and go down. And then again, it just takes so long sometimes and such effort for people to get better. And so, doing this podcast, I really just hope to teach you more about why this needs to be taken seriously. Right now, they're estimating 400 to 600,000 people a year in the United States are infected with Lyme and tick-borne illness. That's a pretty staggering number. And I think comes down to people sometimes just don't get it until you get it. And that's unfortunate because once you get it, sometimes it can take an act of God to get rid of it. And it is possible, though, to heal. And that's one thing that I really just want to highlight as well, is that while it can be very challenging and very dark and very lonely and like super duper hard to get better from, it is possible. And I have another guest here with me today, Kelsey Pellegrine, and she's going to share her story just a little bit more about, of course, how she became involved with this, some of the types of things that she's done, and now the path that she's on. It's very beautiful. It's maybe not something completely uncommon to people with Lyme disease, although I think it's something pretty uncommon with just regular population of people and what happens to them as a result of getting sick and just the beautiful things that can occur out of it. And again, that's another reason that this podcast is here, is just to show you some of the beautiful side of something really ugly. So without further ado, Kelsey, thank you again for joining us here. I'm really honored to have you. You're an awesome entrepreneur, really working and carving out a niche in healing space as well as an herbalist. And I just think that's a beautiful gift and passion that you've cultivated. And I like the pun on word there. If you're thinking cultivating, you're growing this and turning it into something so beautiful and wonderful to give back to the world through something, again, that was very horrible and tumultuous. So if you don't mind, could you just share with us a little bit more about yourself, how you got here, and again, your experience with Lyme and tick-borne illness, please?
Yeah, of course. And thank you for having me on this. I feel pretty honored to be, sharing my story and getting it out there. Lyme disease needs to be something that has, brings more awareness into people's lives, because it is such a daily factor that people don't understand how close in contact they can come with catching Lyme disease, if they're outdoors and whatnot. Mine started exactly that way. And I was lucky enough to catch it early because I am well aware of how detrimental ticks can be. Let me rephrase that. I knew ticks carried Lyme disease. In my opinion, or my knowledge at that point, I did not understand how many other co-infections and how many symptoms that can create until I got it myself. Like you said, I'm into herbalism. I am a forager by passion. I love, edible mushrooms and plants and medicinal plants. And that's kind of what landed me in this predicament. But I was out picking black raspberries in the middle of July, and I got home, I tick checked, I did, I showered everything, and I did not realize that I had one, must have been in my hair, because it crawled down onto my stomach in the middle of the night, and I didn't catch it for about 2 days. It was very small, and I saw it as I was getting ready for work one day, and was barely latched onto me. I tell people that I picked it off of my skin like you pick a fuzzy off of a t-shirt. It was barely bit. Yeah, it hadn't embedded, nothing. It never left a bullseye. It had been on there for maybe, I'd say 24 to 30 hours. But it was definitely long enough to transmit. 5 days later, I had every symptom in the book, fever, muscle pains, and, well, I would say muscle pains, but just like I was getting sick with the flu. And it was the worst fever of my life. And I looked at my boyfriend and I said, I don't know what's going on. And he was like, well, didn't you just pull a tick off you? And I was like, well, yeah, but it wasn't embedded and it didn't leave a mark. It literally left no mark. I could not even show you where it had been. But I went to the doctors the next day, and that's kind of a different story. The doctor's whole situation. They took my blood and ran tests, but they never sent me home with any kind of medication, like doxycycline or anything like that. Which, had I known at the time is what I needed, I would have pushed for that. But I had no clue. I didn't know what steps I was gonna take. I had no idea. She told me to take Tylenol and go home, and she'll call me with the results. And that was on a Thursday, and I didn't get the phone call till Tuesday. And then they sent my script in on that Tuesday. And by that next weekend, I was in the emergency room with, symptoms that I was having panic attacks. I was losing vision. My face would go numb. I couldn't see anything. I was so dizzy all of the time. My anxiety, I was never an anxious person. But the anxiety that I went through at the worst of it was unbearable. I couldn't ride in a vehicle. I couldn't lift my arms up. I couldn't hold my jaw up. I had such terrible neck and back pain. It was very neurological. And I get emotional talking about that because just thinking back how I've gone through it, like, there's very few people who know the worst of what I went through. My boyfriend's one of them. I had a few friends, like when I landed in the emergency room, I was the whole way across the country in Oregon. The day I got diagnosed with Lyme, the next day I flew to Oregon because I had a trip planned, and it ended up being a nightmare. I don't know how I made it home. But it was a lot, and I was thankful to catch it early, within like 2-3 weeks of getting the bite. However, that didn't stop it from becoming very brutal. But one thing that I realized through this all, like we were talking about before, was that had I not become my own doctor, had I not done my own research, I never would have found out that I had babesia, which is the co-infection that's similar to malaria. I had anaplasmosis, which is not as bad as Lyme disease, but present its own symptoms. And I had actually three different strains of Lyme. But dealing with my doctors, my primary care physicians, through all of that was a nightmare. I had to spell babesia to one of my doctors. Yeah, I know. I see your face, and I had to spell babesia to one of my doctors. I had to push for a Bartonella test and a babesia test, which she wasn't even sure what that was. And I told her, I said, I don't care how you figure it out, how to order me this test. I need these tests. And my babesia test came back so high. But thankfully, I had already been taking, because I did my own research, I realized that cryptolepsis, which is an herb from Africa, you're familiar, cryptolepsis, Japanese knotweed, cat's claw, which is great for neurological, and black walnut, sweet wormwood. Say
that fast 10 times.
Right. Sweet wormwood. They were all great for killing Lyme. So I started actually taking those before I knew that I had babesia. So I started taking those on week 3 of my Lyme disease. I didn't find out that I had babesia until probably 2.5 months in. And I met my functional medicine doctor and I told him everything that I was doing. And he was like, had you not been doing that, you would have been way worse off. I'm thinking like, how much worse off could I have been? Because, I was housebound. I couldn't ride in a vehicle. I missed 3 months of work because I couldn't leave. It was quite the experience, but I've come such a long way. That was July of last year. And um, without me doing my own research and pushing for certain tests and whatnot, I definitely would not be where I am today, especially if I stayed with a primary care physician, didn't seek out my functional medicine doctor. I would be in probably such a bad place. And I'm thankful for having the ability to have the world at our fingertips and be able to do our own research.
Yeah. And to be wired like you are to, as we talked about before, like that that takes a lot of just like I want to say discipline, more of just like it is some discipline, but just thought process or determination or
Mhm.
resilience or just sheer willpower. Like I am not going out like this. I'm going to figure
Yeah,
this out. And you
that's
also
exactly that
bring,
was exactly it.
yeah, you bring
Yeah.
some really valid points up too. And just the medical system, unfortunately, is not really set up to know about this on the front side, right? Like it really does take more of a specialist or like a functional medicine doctor, Lyme literate doctor,
Yeah,
somebody who
absolutely.
has more specific experience with this because
Mhm.
traditional Western medicine has been sort of, I think, miseducated.
It's
Um,
Yeah. And
mm,
that's surprising because we live in central Pennsylvania. Well, I
yeah,
mean, we both, yeah,
yeah,
somewhat central Pennsylvania.
yeah,
Pennsylvania is one of the worst states when it comes to Lyme disease.
yes,
More people
yes,
get Lyme disease in our state than others. And you have these doctors in these hotspot areas that don't know the first thing about Lyme disease and the co-infections and the symptoms that they can present. I mean, I saw a neurologist who knew nothing about Lyme disease or neuro Lyme, nothing, and it blew my mind at how little these doctors are informed about Lyme disease, and
yeah,
that's definitely you have to seek out an LLMD.
yes,
You have to seek out a functional medicine doctor because if there are good doctors out there though. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not, but I think if you ask any person with Lyme disease that's had Lyme for a while, that's seen doctor and doctors, they all have the same experience.
yes.
Something along that line, that line, that line. Oh, Lyme disease. Oh gosh, but yeah, something along that line.
Yeah,
They've all had a similar experience with doctors, and it sucks, but that's what you got to become your own doctor at that point,
that's right.
unfortunately.
That's right. And why it's important to talk about these things and help to educate and change the opinion in the masses, right? Like my dad he's retired now, but he was a Western medicine physician. And he told me in medical school, maybe they spent 30 minutes talking about Lyme disease and then they're on to the next topic. And that's fair because, again, we think about all of the things that can happen in a human body and all of the different diseases that are out there. So, like, okay, I get that they can't become specialists overnight, but I think as part of a continuing education effort through the state, they
Mhm.
have an obligation to make sure that all physicians are being given this information, that it's accurate and up to date. And
Yes.
I think where my one of my biggest bones to pick is with the directive by the CDC. I'm not sure if I can really even say this or not, but I think there's been some um, grayness grayness created by some of the structures that they've put into place as to what signifies a positive Lyme case or not,
Yeah.
and really what is adequate treatment. And do we really have a general consensus on what even treatment would look like? Because you and I know living this and experiencing this and talking to other people we do that things don't necessarily like things aren't eradicated in 2 weeks of antibiotics or even 4 weeks of antibiotics.
Yeah.
And they've proven that the spirochete still exists after that. So how
Yeah.
can we not acknowledge, in a sense, that this is happening with people for a longer period of time? The duration that it takes to treat strep is maybe 10 days of antibiotics to adequately treat that bacteria. Then we look at the spirochete and what is considered adequate for that life cycle of the corkscrew-shaped organism. It's like
Mhm.
10 weeks or something. So much longer than what they're really.
It's closer to 12. It's three
Thanks.
months.
Thanks.
Yeah, so it's I like I said, I've done a ton of this research, but yeah, it's doctors, you first get Lyme and doctors prescribing 14 to 21 day cycles of doxycycline. And
Yep.
I get a lot of people that reach out to me and they're like, hey, this person just tested positive or they have bullseyes. And, I don't know if everyone knows, but you don't need a bullseye to have a positive Lyme disease
Yep.
test. Um, like from my example, I it wasn't even embedded in me. I didn't have a bullseye and I had a very positive Lyme test. But yeah, I'm blanking on what I was talking about because that's the one thing that I still have lingering in my Lyme disease experience is my brain fog. And I lose track of what I'm talking about, but
That's okay. We're just kind of relating a little bit more about kind of what maybe where doctors go a little bit wrong on
thank you.
things and don't quite understand this and getting us more towards a specialist and
Uh-huh.
um you know,
Yeah,
and I think also
that's where we were at.
you can kind of talk about the sense where why your brain maybe is still like that, right? Like, so you covered another really good point in that the testing that's out there, you don't need a bullseye. That's where you are at. Like 35% of people get a bullseye rash. So if
Yeah.
you're one of those people, great, you're doing a little bit better in the sense that you can clearly identify it. You don't need blood work.
Mhm.
The other 65% like you, who maybe don't get as virulent of an attack immediately, and it's like a slower degrade, those people are kind of the ones that are really, I think, toast because they don't
I,
have any idea.
yeah,
Um,
and I feel for those people because, I consider myself very lucky for the fact
yeah,
that I saw the tick.
yeah,
But people could go years and years. I'm not exactly sure how long that you went
7
without.
years.
Okay, so yeah, so you went 7 years
Yeah,
without
7 years.
knowing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry.
Hey,
Yeah, I think Lyme disease should be one of the first things that people test for
very
nowadays.
much so. Very much so. But then you
You
think
know?
about how crappy the testing is, right? Like, so we've
Yeah,
got
how
this
many
two-tiered
false
testing is
negatives? Yeah.
it's just
It,
set up for failure for people. So like they've got to fix that. But I do think in our area where it is so rampant, we
yeah.
are in Pennsylvania, it's actually the highest rate of infection state for 12 years. The highest.
Yeah.
The
I believe.
highest in the country, right? Like, so we've got to really do something a little bit differently here. Get us a better
Mhm.
test, give it to people at their annual physicals, even if they're not exhibiting symptoms. Because you know what? I think a lot of times what happens with these people is that they're sick for so long, and it is again like a slow decline, that their equilibrium of what health feels like is is not in balance any longer.
Yeah.
And they don't even
Yeah.
know that they're feeling so poopy until they get better. And they're like, oh my God, I was
Yeah.
so sick.
This is how I'm supposed to feel. I think I never even thought of that. That is, having the Lyme disease part of your annual physical and blood work. I
Yeah.
think that would, wow, how many cases that would help the people that are going long-term COVID, long-term Lyme that have no idea they have it.
Yeah.
Wow, that would
Yeah.
be a game changer. And I think that's something that people should definitely push for.
Huge. And now that we've got these tests that they're coming online with that are a little bit more affordable,
Hmm.
like Vibrant, and now I think IGNX came out with one. It's AccuDart. It's maybe like $150.
Really?
So yeah, because I think
Okay.
they had to do something to compete with Vibrant. But
Yeah, that's what the test I had was the Vibrant. That's
yeah.
that one.
And again, it's like a little bit more affordable and it's maybe becoming more accurate, like the accurate testing is becoming a little bit more mainstream. That's good. That's very encouraging to
Yeah,
see.
absolutely.
But we're also failing in a sense because, like you had mentioned, that's only looking for Lyme, right? And
Yeah,
so then we've got these other
yeah,
co-infections, and you don't have to have Lyme to have some of the co-infections. You could have
yes,
just had Babesia and not really had Lyme.
yeah.
Um, so that Lyme test is again only looking for that and not
Mhm,
these other things like Bartonella, Babesia,
mhm.
Ehrlichiosis, Anaplasmosis. And so somehow that has to be like a comprehensive panel testing. That can't just be.
I agree 100% with that because had I not known about Babesia and the other possible co-infections, I never would have pushed for those tests. And
Yeah.
I think the Babesia was the worst of my symptoms because I was on medication for 9 months. I was on 4 rounds of antibiotics, um, alternating for about 9 months. And when I started the anti-malarias for the Babesia, it was about 2 or 3 months into that I started to really finally be able to do things again.
Yeah.
And people need to remember that, like Lyme disease, yes, they present their own symptoms, um, some worse than others, but these co-infections can absolutely devastate you to the point where, like, after I healed from the babesia, I still had a few Lyme symptoms like achy joints and muscles and whatnot, which I knew were from that versus the babesia. And it's incredible how these co-infections can present so many different symptoms. And it's almost like narrowing them down to, like, okay, I have calf and feet pain, that might be Bartonella, or I'm having anxiety and night sweats, that's probably babesia. Like, there's so many different symptoms that can relate to so many different co-infections, and going back to the doctors, they don't understand that. So I think having that comprehensive panel that has that full, your all of your co-infections testing and everything like that would solve so many undiagnosed cases of Lyme disease.
I agree. And potentially save a lot of others, right? Like
Yeah.
I can tell you, I can't even count on, I can count on two hands way more than like, I'm like, I don't even have enough hands to count the people that I know that have had joint replacements and things done to their body
Yeah.
because they didn't know they had Lyme and tick-borne illness. And potentially maybe they could have avoided a knee replacement or a hip
Yeah.
replacement had they realized that the pain and the inflammation and the disorder was coming from a tick-borne illness spectrum
Yeah.
instead. And so,
And too, with long-term Lyme, is that Alzheimer's and cancer runs parallel with Lyme disease.
yes.
So you have these mild cases of Lyme disease, and I'm not going to say any names, but I have some friends who, oh, yeah, I did the doxycycline and, it flares up every now and then. And I'm like, buddy, you still have Lyme disease. Like, it don't matter how many times it flares up. If it's once every 3 years, like, that is something that can haunt you later on in life if you don't get that taken care of. And people say that Lyme disease, once you have it, you have it. And I agree with that to some extent. I think that with proper health and, mindset and diet and everything, you can really, I wouldn't say cure. I'll never use the word cure for it because it's possible that that's impossible, but you can suppress it to the point where you never ever have to deal with it for the rest of your life. Um, and I feel like, and I hope, and I knock on wood that that's where I'm at because of
Yeah.
what I've put myself through.
Yeah.
Um, that I just have to essentially stay on top of my diet, become this more self-aware, I wouldn't say spiritual, but more in tune with my body than I was before. And I think that this change has been positive in that way, where I am now like a new person before when I started this Lyme journey. in the aspect that I am more in tune with myself. I am treating my body better. I am putting better nutrition into my diet, and being more conscious of how things affect you when it comes to like even your daily surroundings and the toxins that are in our environment. Becoming more self-aware of that and changing things to be less toxic and creating a home that is basically a healthy home. That's I think what has, through this whole journey has made me into a better person for. And
Yes.
it was definitely a long journey. It was definitely a long, hard, difficult mountain climbing journey, but
Yes. But
there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel if you can have that mindset. And that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about some too was
yeah.
brain rewiring. I'm sure you're familiar. Um, that was so I was having some lingering symptoms, and I could not figure out what I needed to do in order to get completely healed, I guess you could say, back to myself. And I was reading a book, and I actually have it here with me. It's called Autoimmune Illness and Lyme Disease Recovery Guide, by Katina I. Makris. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But it's Mending the Body, Mind, and Spirit.
Huh.
I'll show it to you.
Thanks. I've never heard of this one before. I'll put this
I
on my
found
list.
it on a whim, and I'm kind of shocked. I mean, I don't know if you can see like how dirty and like kind of
Loved
like
it is.
here's this book is, but she goes through so much in this book about your mindset can and has the power to alter your physical body and body, mind, spirit. That's if you're putting into the universe that I'm never going to get better, I can't get through this, I don't know what's wrong with me, or I don't have help, or I don't have support. I was lucky enough to have someone that was there with me the whole duration, through my lowest of lows. But had I not had that person, things probably would have been pretty rough. But you have the option of allowing yourself to be the victim and allowing yourself to continue on that lifestyle or that path, or becoming stronger through it, both mentally and, well, I wouldn't say physically, because it takes a little bit to get physically stronger after you go through that. But you can either let it hold you back or you can let it propel you. I was not only afraid for like what my future was going to hold had I not taken it upon myself to do my own research, but I I was in that low state where I was finding a black hole, I guess you could say, or the darkness. I was very negative. And it's understandable. Like, how could you not be in when you went from being a perfectly healthy 32-year-old to not even being able to leave the couch, not even being able to hold your jaw up, not being able to drive, not even being able to scroll on your phone without getting dizzy. Like, it's definitely difficult, I think, to have that mindset of positive thinking, but your thoughts can, and how do I want to say this? Your thoughts have the power to alter your physical self.
Yes.
And I mean, this through meditation and whatnot, but positive thinking, I will get better. I can get through this.
Yes.
Um, I will find the light, all that stuff. You got to tell yourself, like, even if it's a small thing, like, hi, I'm Kelsey, and changing it from I have Lyme disease to I'm a Lyme warrior or something, just something small like that keep telling yourself that I am a Lyme warrior. I will fight this. That was actually the final step to getting myself back to myself. Um, And I was absolutely mind blown about how, I would say quickly that it changed for me, but how much progress I made after being able to switch my mindset like that. And I tell everybody, you got to pay attention to your mind, body, and spirit. And
That's right.
and there's a few other things too, but like you have to address the root causes of everything.
Yes.
Lyme disease, that's the one thing that Lyme disease teaches you, is that you can't just cover this up with medication. Like other, doctors would say, oh, here's a prescription that you take for the rest of your life or whatnot. You have to get to the root of your issues. And by going to the root, you learn so much more about yourself. But you have to put in the work. You have to commit to doing that work and really digging deep, because it's the root for a reason. You got to
Yes.
get to the root.
Yes. Yes. You really make
Yeah.
me think about, do you know Joe Dispenza? Are you familiar with any of his work?
Um, Remind me of something that.
So he does a lot of like webinars and things, but one of his books is the power becoming supernatural is one, becoming supernatural, the power of breaking you, or like the habit of breaking you, I think is another. But he does a lot of the mind retraining. He's much more into epigenetics versus your
Okay.
actual genetics. Like he's like your environment is causing these things to happen
Yes.
to you, the
Okay.
things that you think, the things that you eat, the things that you do. And
Yes.
he has a saying that I love, and I was going to throw it out for you when you're
Yeah.
trying to describe exactly what you're getting at. But he says thoughts matter because they become matter.
Yes.
Thoughts matter because they become matter. And so it's very important for us to be guided and guarded with our thoughts and intentional with what we're putting out there as energy, because it's going to manifest into something.
Yes.
And we want to be feeding good thoughts and good manifestations and
Hmm.
healing thoughts versus unhealthy, I'm sick, I'm stuck, I'm never going to get better thoughts. And
Yeah.
I mean, not every day is going to be like, yes,
No.
I'm I'm gonna
No,
heal,
it's
I'm healing,
not.
it's wonderful. You're gonna
Yeah.
have your moments, of course, we're human beings, but
Uh-huh.
overall, you want that overarching attitude to be that you are going to get better, that you are
Mhm.
going to heal.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you just have to be thoroughly committed, or I'm blanking out in terms of, there's another book that I kind of make a play on where you're just like so committed to the thought that you're going to heal, like nothing else matters. You're not
Uh-huh.
taking no as an answer. Like you're just so committed in this as an outcome. And I think that's partially where I got to, was like I knew that people didn't get better. I knew people, and we do have choice. Like I don't want to sound so crass when I say that, and I'm not taking that as a light statement when I throw that out there, like, oh, you
Mhm.
have the choice of whether you're gonna get better or not. You really do in the end, subconsciously, consciously. It is an effort of body, mind, and soul,
Mhm.
really sitting with self, doing a lot of introspection and
Mhm.
figuring out how to not be the victim, but to be the person who's going to regain their health. And
Yes.
when you can make that switch, I really think that's when a lot of the magic happens for people.
Mhm.
And as a practitioner, and I'm sure you probably have a fair amount of experience with this, is like you can almost hear in people's words and the words that they choose to describe their situation if they're going to get better or not.
Yes.
And I,
Yep.
I kind of hate it
I
because
hate
it's
it
like,
too. Yeah. Because
oh,
how do you tell those people that, what you're saying is what you're going to be? How do you tell
yeah,
those people? Yeah, it's one of those things where you could word vomit left and right, and they're just never going to take any of it from you until
that's
they have to kick it into gear and learn that themselves the hard way. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like,
yeah, yeah.
unless
And also,
some people don't at all.
and it's like, that's what I was gonna, like, what else are they gaining from being sick? Like, what are people, are they comfortable? They're not having to go to work, they're not having to take care of the kids, they're getting waited on, like whatever it is. It's kind of a warped instance, like to think that that's
Yeah.
potentially what's happening there. But like I do think people need to reality check a little bit on that point and just be
Yeah.
like, okay, is this serving me to stay sick or is this serving me to get well? And maybe
Hmm.
that's really a better thing for people to look at. Is this something that's serving me to get well? Or is this going to serve to continue to hold me at where I'm at? And if it's something that's going to continue to hold you where you're at, same thoughts, same whatever,
Hmm.
just check yourself, do the exact opposite. And um, you
Yeah.
had said something earlier that also made me think about just the fact that again, it's the actual inflammation of the brain, right? Like,
Hmm.
so when you were talking about being in the dark hole and also
Yeah.
just like feeling very just
Oh,
dark.
damn. Oh, yeah.
Um, I think a lot of times that's potentially illness. I think that's the
Mhm.
dis-ease itself trying to
Yes,
gain control of your mind and keep you there. And um,
I agree.
it's kind of it is a parasitic, you contract it from a parasite. It
Mhm.
has like parasitic behaviors and things, and
Mhm.
it's like feeding off of you. And if you get better, it's not going to have a space to feed off of. So it's wanting
Exactly.
to control you to keep you in that space. And you have to figure out how to separate your own self from that controlling dis-ease.
Exactly. And like with Lyme disease, you crave sugar, you crave
Yeah,
gluten, because of the fact that that's what feeds the Lyme. So it's
that's
going
right.
to cause you to crave that stuff
That's right.
so that it continues to eat. And that's
Right.
exactly with the brain too. It's going to trick your brain into thinking that, this is what I need to do, but that's actually the Lyme or the co-infections talking.
That's right.
Um, So it's a matter of finding your inner strength and breaking through that barrier where you can distinguish between, is it me or is it the Lyme? Is it
Yeah.
me or is it the co-infections? And then figuring out what steps you need to take in order to starve that,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah. Because like I was just watching something about mold,
Yeah.
and they were showing I think there were slugs, and the slug got this mold and it completely hijacked it and it caused it to turn rainbow colors. Like it was like completely psychedelic, and it was wild to see because it was still a slug, but it was no longer in charge of itself. It was being driven by this mold that had infested its body. And I'm like, wow.
Mhm.
Like, I'm just like, oh my God, think about what this does to people. Like, if this is doing
Yeah.
this to this little slug, what is, and that's another big thing for people to think about in this space is like mold, or you had touched on candida,
Mhm.
right? Like, these are some other things that are opportunistic that I
Yes.
think
Opportunistic.
I never know which one comes first, right? Like, maybe if you're in the moldy environment first, it suppresses the immune that the Lyme can come in, or is it that the Lyme's there and then the immune is suppressed from that, and then these other things can come in
I
on
think
top of that? Like,
it's mainly, yeah. So I research this a lot too. The Lyme disease, and it's my case too, kind of shows this issue is that I thought I was healthy. I was eating like garbage. I was, going out and having burgers and French fries and pizza and having a beer with friends and stuff like that. Not really paying attention to what I was putting into my body. And then I got Lyme disease, and then that started going downhill with Lyme disease. I started, my immune system was so, I wouldn't say broken, but before I got Lyme, I was sick all the time. I remember the month or the winter before I got Lyme, I was sick every single month
oof,
for days at a time. I felt like I was constantly sick. I couldn't get better. I was just waiting for the next round of whatever was going to hit me. Then I got Lyme. My immune system crashed. And then the candida started taking over and started showing itself. I was having such brain fog. My skin was breaking out. I have um, tinea versicolor now, which I'm
yeah,
still treating
yeah,
the spots on my skin because of it. So, yeah, I think Lyme brings your immune system down. And then whatever your immune system was suppressing, like mold toxicity or heavy metal
yeah,
toxicity, would skyrocket with the Lyme. And now all of a sudden, not only do you have Lyme disease, but you have the heavy metal or the mold or candida or a fungal or just, Lyme disease brings out everything that was hiding for years.
yeah, yeah,
Learned that the hard way.
yeah. And I'm curious, so in your research, for people who are dealing with mold and Lyme,
Mhm.
do you have priority for one or the other in terms of how you would recommend treatment for people?
Yes. So I would you have to get out of the moldy environment.
Mm,
If you're in the environment that you got you sick, you will not heal from Lyme nor mold if you're in that environment.
no.
You have to essentially detox the mold out of your system. Same thing with heavy metal toxicity too. You have to detox that essentially out of your system, get out of that environment, and then you can start to heal from the Lyme.
Yeah.
And but some cases are mild to the point where you can essentially treat both at the same time. Just depends on how severe it is and where you're at, if you can get out of that situation or not. But yeah, you definitely have to treat. For me, the Candida was, I was simultaneously treating both of those by like changing my diet, taking probiotics, and taking like oil of oregano and stuff to kind of kill off the Candida while putting in good probiotics. But I was also on 4 different antibiotics, so probiotics was a must. Um, so I treated simultaneously, but it all depends on the severity, I think, of which of what you have. But you can't get better from Lyme if you don't treat the things that are going to hold it back from you, if that makes sense.
Yes, thanks. Because that's one thing I just also kind of want to highlight for people is like,
Mhm.
if you're struggling to get better, you're not sure what's happening, why is this not treatment not working for me? Make sure that you're doing your due diligence and checking your mold and heavy metal loads
Yeah.
because they can have a really big bearing in terms of your overall progression
Yeah.
for healing. And you can throw thousands of dollars into the Lyme bucket, but if you're not tackling the mold bucket or the heavy metal bucket, you're just going to keep putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in the Lyme bucket and probably
Yeah.
not getting as far as you could get. So,
Yeah.
um,
Definitely.
yeah.
And of course, checking for the co-infections as well. I was at there's a Lyme disease support group in my area. Every month they meet, and I was at my first one, and there were some people there that was also their first time. And we were talking about Lyme. I think it was a functional medicine doctor that was in, and we were all talking back and forth. And he was like, "What are you guys talking about when you say co-infections or Bartonella or Babesia? Or like, what are you talking about?" I was just like, "How long have you had Lyme?" He was like, "Well, pretty bad for probably 2 or 3 years now." And I was like, "Okay, have you ever been tested for a co-infection?" He was like, "No." And I was like, "Well, if you can't get better, you need to either test for the co-infections or the other like vibrant tests that panel does the mold toxicity. And I don't think it does the heavy metal, but it does the Candida and the fungal and all the strains of Lyme." And so he was writing it down. I was like, "You need to get tested for co-infections." Lyme was, I wouldn't say a breeze, but compared to the symptoms that Babesia presented, it was a nightmare compared to the Lyme.
Yeah.
So,
And
he took, he wrote that all down. I don't know how he's doing now. I haven't seen him since, but I hope that he got some answers.
you probably greatly shifted his life towards the better. We're gonna go with that thought and that,
Yeah,
hopefully he's fixing himself because you have let
hopefully.
him know these other issues that
If you're
exist.
listening, if you're listening,
Saying a prayer for you
reach
that you
out to
got the
me.
help you need. Yeah.
Yes, I'm thinking of
Um,
you.
yeah. And then my favorite question to end things with is really in your opinion, and you've highlighted a lot of this as we've gone through, but really, what's the best thing that's happened to you as a result of getting Lyme and tick-borne illness?
So, yeah, that's, for people that are going through it right now, this is probably going to be hard for them to see the light at the end of the tunnel at the moment. But going through this process has made me into, trying to think of the best word to describe this, not as like a stronger person. I am stronger when it comes to the mind because I've put myself through so much. But I I say I'm 99% healed. I'm still fighting my candida, but this entire process has changed me. I'm 99% the person that I was before in regards to my character, but I'm a completely different person now. I understand the environmental influences that the environment has on your health. I understand the importance of you are what you eat. I understand, of putting myself first and just focusing on my health as a whole for not only what I just went through, but for myself in the long run. I now have this completely different outlook on life. I I have a better understanding of what life is supposed to be and how I'm supposed to feel. And that's huge because had I not gotten Lyme, I would have kept eating like garbage and I would have not understood the importance of all of those things until it might have been too late. Or, now I have the rest of my life to essentially like live it as healthy as I can and add on years to my life and hopefully guide the people that I love into doing the same thing because life is so short here on earth. And why would you not want to spend it being the best version of yourself? And that's what Lyme taught me. And I know my journey wasn't as long as others, but it was a powerful one. And I'm thankful to be able to share my story with other people.
Yes, I'm really thankful for that too. That's a really good way to summarize it. And um, I don't necessarily think that there's ever anything to say like it might not have been as long as some, like there's really no comparison, right? It's
You're
it's
right. You're right.
everybody's journey is its own individual thing.
Mhm.
I think it's the outcome that really matters most and really what you've gained
Yeah.
out of that. And what a beautiful thought in that we are here in such a short period of time. Why would
Mhm.
we not want to live in the best version of ourselves that we possibly can be? And
Exactly.
through this experience, you gain such levity that way and clarity. And again, it set you up for so much better success down the road. And I often think like, well, maybe my version of what optimal health is isn't the same as someone else's, but it's like, no, I know I feel so much better in my body. Like I used to have high
Mhm.
cholesterol. I felt like I was stuffed in my skin. I felt like I had sausage casing. That was like the best way I could describe it to people. I knew I just didn't feel well.
Yeah.
And I had some skin issues. I had overweight issues. I had inflammation, puffiness in my body. Um, just a lot of other things. Like I drank alcohol. Like I totally changed that. Like I don't drink alcohol anymore. It's been years since I've
I
had alcohol.
Yep.
But like
I have.
I just feel better, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel
Yeah.
better. And
Yeah.
we talked about this before, but it's like, what would we feel like now had we not gone through these changes? Like,
Mhm.
would I even be here?
Mhm.
I hardly look like the person that I was. And
Yeah.
still still there, right? Like it's still the same physical set person in a sense,
Mhm.
but like it's a completely different
Yeah. I'm a
um
completely different person now.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I lost actually 35 pounds through everything.
Yeah.
Um, some of it was muscle mass because I was so weak, but yeah, I look different than I was, and I am a completely different person.
Yeah.
There are some characteristics of myself that makes me who I am, but for the most part, yeah, my mindset's completely different.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm thankful for. I mean, I wish we didn't have to go through what we went through in order to figure this out. So like,
Exactly.
it's I hope that more people, I wouldn't say learn from our experiences or mistakes, don't call it a mistake, but I hope more people learn through our experience and will take, what we have to say for, of importance and utilize that in their own life.
Yes. Yes. Hopefully not recreating the wheel. And maybe through our experiences, through our shared collective experiences, we can
Yeah.
help people find the end faster, right? Like
Yeah.
get out of that hole of
Yeah.
darkness faster. That's
Mhm.
really, again, it's not really our right to take away somebody's evolution by skipping the part of the transformation that happens during the duration of the illness. Like it
Mhm.
sucks. It's not
Yeah.
that fun. I don't really want to be in that space and I don't want to ever go back there. But because of what I gain from it, it's like, okay, okay. So I don't, it's like you can't really end that in a sense, but also like if we can make it shorter or give
Yeah.
more meaning to it or have people have like better grasp of what's really happening to themselves,
Mhm.
I think that's so worth it. And
True.
it's huge
Agree.
again to be able to sit here in a state of health and wholeness like we are and share these stories and tell people
Mhm.
like it gets ugly for a while, but
Yeah.
it gets okay again. And you just
Yeah.
have to hold on and keep persevering and just listen, use our story as strength to
Yeah.
continue to fight because in the blink of an eye you can regain your health and it might be the smallest, craziest thing that makes the biggest change to you, but
Hmm. Yeah.
if you're not there to find it out, like
Yeah.
you're gonna miss out. So you gotta just keep going and keep trying.
Exactly. And everybody's journeys are different, but you can't appreciate the good without going through the bad. And I think that's what people need to remember, that,
Yeah.
when they get to the other side, it's going to be something that they're really going to have a new appreciation for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Much better. And so now you do work with people?
I I would like to. I don't yet when it comes to like one-on-one
Okay.
health level, I would like to. I've been looking into getting my licensing
Okay.
to do herbal modalities
Yeah, good.
for good. Just because of the fact that I was passionate for that stuff before I got Lyme.
Yep.
I was passionate for natural remedies and the edible mushrooms and plants. So yeah, going through the Lyme definitely propelled me to want to learn more about that because of the fact that you use so much herbal medicine in Lyme.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I think that's something I definitely would love to get into, is helping people. But I do currently have an Etsy shop
Okay.
with my own foraged goods, um, like cat's claw. I can't forage cat's claw, but I have made my own tinctures, and I've made um, my own non-toxic sunscreens
Cool.
and candles, and some salves from locally foraged stuff too. So that might be something that people can check out if they're interested in supporting a small business for now. But
How would they find
yeah,
you there?
I it's my shop is called the Appalachian Remedy Company,
Okay.
Appalachian Remedy Co. on Etsy,
Great.
and I'm based out of Muncie, Pennsylvania. So you'll see that on my shop if you find it. But it's the Appalachian Remedy Co. on
Great.
Etsy.
Thank you.
So
Because I did see some of
yeah,
your product on your Facebook page and it looks very
yeah.
nicely made
I'll
and
send you the link too, so that
perfect.
way
I can
you
put
have
that in the show notes.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be great. Thanks. Well, I really
yeah.
appreciate you spending so much time with me and just sharing your story again to help others learn
Mhm.
more and to have hope and to know that in the end it's going to be okay. And if somebody's interested to reach out to you, I think that you're okay with that. If
Yeah,
they want to wrap with you
absolutely,
about foraging or different
absolutely.
things, yep, feel free. And the way I found you was through social media on Facebook. So I know that you're there and you're pretty active, and that's nice to see there. And I'm grateful again for your time. So thank you very
Yeah,
much for being
and
you and being here.
thank you so
Yeah,
much. I appreciate it.
my pleasure.